All right, let's just get right into it. Have you ever had one of those days, or maybe weeks, where your sales just feel, I don't know, completely chaotic? You're running around putting out fires, reacting to everything, just kind of hoping that a deal will somehow fall into your lap? Yeah, if that sounds familiar, trust me, you are not alone. But here's the good news. There is a much better way. I love this quote because it just hits the nail on the head, right? If you don't know where you're going, sure, any road will get you somewhere. But that's the whole problem. That kind of randomness, that's a huge risk for any business. It's really the difference between just wandering around aimlessly and actually navigating with a purpose. And that wandering has a real cost. So let me introduce you to Mike. Mike is a good guy, he works hard, he's great at building relationships, but let's be honest, he's an average performer. And he just lost a huge deal. I mean, this was a deal that would have made a third of his entire yearly quota. He thought he was prepared. He did his homework, the meeting went great, and then, less than 24 hours later, he gets that dreaded call. Hey, Mike, thanks, but we went with your competitor. Just like that, the rug was completely pulled out from under him. So what went wrong? Well, Mike's story really tees up the big question, doesn't it? Why bother with a sales strategy at all? The answer, when you boil it all down, is pretty simple. It's about moving from that feeling of chaos we talked about to a feeling of control. And when you look at it side by side, the difference is just night and day. On one hand, you've got life without a strategy. Think stagnant sales, a confused team where everyone's kind of doing their own thing, and a whole lot of reactive, heat-of-the-moment decisions. Not great. But then you put a strategy in place and everything changes. You get focused growth. Your team is totally aligned. They all know the playbook. And you're planning ahead. You're proactive. You're anticipating the next move instead of just getting caught off guard. So here's the thing we really need to get straight. A strategy is not some boring, dusty binder that just sits on a shelf collecting cobwebs. No way. It's a living, breathing blueprint for your success. It's the master plan that lays out exactly how you're going to win new customers, keep the ones you have, and grow those relationships over time. Okay, so if we're calling it a blueprint, what are the actual building blocks? What's it made of? Let's get into the nitty-gritty and break down what goes into a winning sales strategy. It really comes down to 4 key pillars. Think of it like a foundation. First, you've got your goals. I mean, what are you actually trying to achieve? Be specific. Second, your customer. Who are you selling to? Like, really, who are they? Third, you gotta know your competition. And fourth, you need to define your process, your unique way of doing things. Get those 4 things right, and you've got a solid foundation to build on. Now, all 4 of those are absolutely critical, don't get me wrong. But for our purposes here, we're going to zoom in on what I think is the most important one of all, your customer. Why? Because at the end of the day, everything, and I mean everything, starts and ends with them. So how do you really get to know your customer? The single best tool for this is something called a buyer persona. Now, this isn't just some vague, fluffy description. It's a super detailed, semi-fictional profile of your perfect, ideal customer. And the key here is that it's built on market research and real data. It gives your entire team a crystal clear picture of who you're all trying to talk to. All right, theory is great, but let's make this real. Let's look at an example persona. Dr. Brian Caldwell, a surgeon. Okay, so what's his deal? Well, his main pain point is that his current equipment is actually holding him back. What does he need? His patients expect the best quality care. What's his goal? He wants to be known as the go-to surgeon in town. And what's his deepest motivation? It's all about patient welfare. See what just happened? He's no longer just some abstract customer on a spreadsheet. He's a real person with real problems and goals. That level of detail, it changes everything. Okay, now on the flip side, let's meet Susan. She works at the very same company as our friend Mike, but she's a top performer. So what's the big difference? Simple. Susan knows her Dr. Caldwell's like the back of her hand. She gets their goals, she understands what drives them, she feels their pain points, and because she has that deep understanding, she's not just out there pushing a product. She's solving a very specific problem for a very specific person. And that deep customer knowledge, well, it lets people like Susan see the whole playing field in a totally different light. They're able to think in what we call strategic snapshots. Think about it like this. Mike is focused on the fundamentals, which are important, right? Pre-call planning, asking good questions, handling objections. But Susan, she's doing all of that. Plus, she's operating on another level. She's using these simple yet incredibly powerful tools to see the entire picture and, crucially, to challenge her own assumptions as she goes. And this is her secret weapon,
the toolkit. There are 4 of these strategic snapshots, and each one gives you a clear picture of the deal from a different angle. You've got the situational snapshot, which helps you understand all the buying factors. There's the influencer snapshot to map out who's who in the zoo. The competitive snapshot helps you nail down what they're really basing their decision on. And finally, the value snapshot, which is all about connecting what you offer to what they actually care about.
Now, it's easy to look at this and think, oh, that's just for beginners. And you know what? Even Susan, a top performer, was a bit skeptical at first. She was like, yeah, I already do all this in my head. But then someone actually sketched one of these out on the back of a napkin and asked her a couple of simple questions about one of her deals, and boom, it hit her. She realized she was making a ton of assumptions. So the big takeaway here is that these tools aren't a crutch for average performers, they're a whetstone for anyone who wants to sharpen their strategic mind. Okay, let's bring it back to Mike. Remember that massive deal he lost right at the beginning? We now know why he lost it. He completely missed the customer's actual decision criteria, the stuff they were using to judge him against his competitor. So take a look at this list. Which one of these snapshots do you think could have saved his bacon? If you guessed the competitive snapshot, you are absolutely right. This tool is designed for one specific thing, to uncover what truly matters to your customer, not just what you think matters. It forces you to stop focusing on why you think you're so great and instead zero in on what the customer actually values. For Mike, that single shift in perspective, that was the difference between losing a third of his quota and knocking it out of the park. All right, so we've covered why you need a strategy and what it's made of. Now for the most important part. How do you actually put it all together and turn a plan into real-world action? And the very first step, before you do anything else, is to just get brutally honest with yourself. You've got to take a hard, unflinching look in the mirror at where you are right now. What's working? What's not? Why do people buy from you? And maybe the tougher question, why do they sometimes go with the other guy? A really powerful and classic way to do this is with a SWOT analysis. You've probably seen this before. It's just a simple grid. What are your strengths and weaknesses? Those are internal. And what are the opportunities and threats out there in the market? Those are external. It's such a great framework because it helps you double down on your strengths, shore up your weaknesses, and keep an eye out for both dangers and new chances to grow. Okay, so once the strategy is set, you can't just hope it works. You have to measure what matters. This means defining and then tracking the key activities that actually move the needle on your plan. You know, things like prospecting, how many presentations you're giving, your closing ratio. It's that old saying, right? If you can't measure it, you can't improve it. And this might be the most important takeaway of all. Please remember that a strategy is not a set it and forget it kind of deal. It's not a crock pot. The world is always changing, right? Your competitors get smarter, your customers' needs evolve. Your plan has to be a living, breathing thing that you're constantly reviewing, coaching your team on, and tweaking based on what's actually happening out in the field. Which brings us right back to Mike and Susan. The difference is crystal clear now, isn't it? Susan wins consistently because her strategy is her North Star. It guides every single thing she does. And Mike? Well, Mike's the eternal optimist. He sees a giant pile of manure and he just starts digging, thinking, I am sure there is a pony in here somewhere. He's hoping for success. Susan is planning for it. So when it's all said and done, you have to ask yourself a simple question about how you work. Are you just out there making calls, digging through manure, and hoping to find a pony? Or are you going to be the one who takes control, who sees the whole picture, and who builds a deliberate, thoughtful strategy for success? It's your call.